Hi, I'm Megan and welcome to my kitchen. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing some homemaking basics with you. These are 4 things that we normally buy from the store, and there's nothing at all wrong with that, but it's good to be able to know how to make it from scratch yourself in case, maybe you don't want to go to the store just for one item, or you've got some ingredients that you want to use up. So let me show you how to do this. You don't need any special equipment or really any detailed canning knowledge or anything like that. These are really easy, so let's get into these recipes. First up, I'm making small batch refrigerator dill pickles. Now, I used to can with my granny when I was a little girl, but to be honest with you, I was quite young. She passed away when I was 13, and I don't remember a lot of the things that she taught me, but I still like to do things like make pickles to, help me think of her and remember that time, but also because they're just delicious. But if you're like me and you don't have special canning equipment, or if you're kind of intimidated by it, this is perfect for you. Or if you just have some cucumbers that, need to be used up, again, great use for that. So let me show you how to put this together. Here are the ingredients that we're going to use. You'll need sugar, some whole peppercorns, dill, fresh garlic, and you'll want to have the whole cloves, salt, plain white vinegar, and then cucumbers. Now, you'll want to use either pickling cucumbers, or sometimes you see them as Kirby cucumbers. You don't have to peel them or anything. Just give them a really, really good wash. So here's how we're going to do this. I've got this jar, and I'm just using a leftover Vlasic pickle jar. I just rinsed it and washed it really well and allowed it to dry. To the jar, we're going to add in some fresh dill and some of the garlic cloves. You'll also want to add in the peppercorns at this point. I forgot. You'll see me do it later, but you can do it at this point. And to be honest, if you don't want to add the dill or the garlic, if you don't have it on hand, you can skip it, but it just adds a really good dill flavor and good garlic flavor to the pickles. So we're going to add our sliced pickles, and you just want to cut these kind of thin. I like to cut them in rounds. You can cut them in spears if you prefer to do that. And you want to pack them pretty tightly into the jar and give it a good smush down, so that there are quite a bit of cucumbers in there and they're compacted together. Now we're going to make the brine, and I apologize, I forgot to mention, but all of the recipes from this video will be down in the description box below for you. So to this small saucepan, I've added in some water. We're going to add in the vinegar, the salt, and then the sugar. You're going to give that a whisk and then bring this to a boil. Once it's at a boil, we're going to reduce it to a simmer and cook it for just about 2 or 3 minutes and give it a whisk every now and then. All you're really doing is dissolving the sugar and the salt. Once your sugar and salt has dissolved, you can set it to the side. Now, I let this cool ever so slightly. You still want it to be hot when you pour it over your pickles. But I'm going to pour that brine over the pickles, and if you don't have quite enough, you can just top off the rest of the jar with some plain water. That's totally fine. And then that's pretty much it. You're going to cover this tightly with a lid. I like to let it sit out at room temperature and kind of cool down, and then I pop it into the refrigerator. Now, you do want to let these chill in the refrigerator for at least 24 hours before you try them, though, because obviously it needs time for the brine to go all the way into those pickles. And after maybe, I would say, like 2 or 3 days, they are perfection. So yummy, super quick, super easy. And look, we didn't need any special equipment, no special ingredients, pickling salt or anything like that. Pretty much everything you probably had on hand, except for maybe the cucumbers. And if you have some, like I said, left over from your garden that you needed to use up, this is a perfect way to do this. Next up, we're going to make cream of chicken soup. You guys, I've wanted to make this for years, and I don't know why, but for some reason, I guess I thought it was more complicated than what it was. And this was so ridiculously quick and easy. It took like maybe 5 minutes to put together, and I already had everything on hand, and I'm sure you probably do as well. And once again, this is a great way to use up leftovers if you've got some mushrooms hanging around, or celery, or whatever you want to use. Great use for it. So here are the ingredients we're going to use for this, and again, the recipe will be down below. This made like one batch, or one I'll say use of cream of blank soup, whether you're doing chicken, celery, mushrooms, whatever. We're going to use some regular all-purpose flour, milk. You could also do cream or half and half, salt and pepper, and butter. And then I'm choosing to do cream of chicken. So you'll need chicken broth or chicken bouillon. And then you can also use some like already pre-cooked chicken. I would just chop it up into little pieces if you like. I know with the store-bought cream of chicken soup, sometimes the little chicken pieces can kind of weird people out. So you can just totally omit the chicken and just use the chicken broth. That's totally fine. And then there were instructions in the recipe for how to make this gluten-free if you need to do that. And then like I said earlier, if you want to do cream of celery or cream of mushroom instead of the chicken, just chop up some celery or some mushrooms. I've got a saucepan over medium heat. I'm going to add a few tablespoons of butter and allow that to melt. Now, if you're using celery or mushrooms or onion, you could do cream of onion soup. I would add the diced vegetables here and cook them in the butter until they're tender. We're next going to add in the flour. Just sprinkle it over your butter, and then we're going to give that a whisk. And you'll just want to cook this for about a minute until the flour starts to get a little brown. You're just cooking that flour taste out. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of chopped up chicken. And like I said earlier, if the little pieces of chicken weird you out or maybe you don't have any on hand, that's totally fine. You can absolutely skip it. I'm going to give that a stir, and then we are ready to add in our liquid. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to do some chicken broth, or I'm using chicken bouillon powder and milk. If you want to keep this vegetarian, you could just add in some vegetable broth. So we're going to slowly add our liquids in, and you want to make sure, again, you do this slowly and you constantly whisk while you're doing it. When you first add in the liquid, it'll look a little chunky and separated, but no worries, you're doing it right. Just go with it. Keep whisking it until it's smooth. We're going to season this to taste with a little salt and pepper, and this is another great thing about making this from scratch, is that you can control the amount of sodium in it. So if you're someone who is trying to watch their salt, you can control the amount of salt in this. So we're just going to simmer this for, gosh, maybe like 3 minutes or so until it gets thick, and that's it. Give it a taste, adjust the seasonings to your taste, and it is ready to go. Now, I'm sure I don't have to tell you this. There are so many different uses for cream of chicken soup or cream of mushroom soup. You can do casseroles today. I used it to make some homemade chicken and dumplings, and they were so good. That homemade cream of chicken soup was so much better than the canned, and I just cannot get over how easy and quick it was, and I literally had everything on hand. So if you're going to make a casserole or something and you're out of a can of cream of, blank soup, try making it yourself from scratch. I was actually really surprised by the results. I had a little basil plant earlier in the summer that I got like from Walmart or Kroger, and I planted it, and that basil plant has been doing really good. But I had a ton of basil, and I was like, I'm never going to use this before it goes bad. And I was like, oh my gosh, why don't I try to make homemade pesto? And so I looked at several different recipes. Again, the one I'll use will be linked down below. Once again, super quick and easy, and I had most everything on hand, just had to pick up a couple things from the store. So let me show you how I made this. I've got my basil. I gave it a good wash and dried it. Salt and pepper, some fresh garlic, fresh lemon juice, some shredded Parmesan cheese, olive oil, and then for the nuts. So yes, I know pine nuts are more traditional with pesto. But number one, they're a little on the pricey side. And number two, I had this bag of walnuts. These were actually in the freezer. If you store nuts in the freezer, they last longer. And I really needed to use these up. And I saw several recipes that said that you can use different nuts, walnuts. I've seen people use pecans, almonds in their pesto. So I decided to give it a try. It was delicious. So just use whatever nuts you've got on hand or whatever you can find on sale. So to a food processor, we're going to add the basil. And again, I just washed this really well and dried it. Next, we're going to add in the shredded Parmesan cheese. And of course, you could take a wedge of Parmesan cheese and grate it yourself if you'd like, but I'm just using the stuff from the tub. Then I'm going to add the nuts. And I did see a few recipes that said that you should toast the nuts before you added them. But I just skipped it and it was still delicious. But you can toast the nuts, of course, if you'd like. Next, we're going to add in some garlic, and I just gave it a quick rough chop. You don't have to worry about really mincing it finely. The food processor will do that for you. We're going to add in the olive oil and then the fresh lemon juice. And then that's pretty much it. We're just going to cover this and then pulse this until it is the desired consistency. I did have to add in a little bit more olive oil than what the recipe called for. And then again, that's pretty much it. You just want to give this a taste and add a little salt and pepper to taste, and then it'll be ready to go. I know it's not traditional, but I did see several recipes where people added spinach to their pesto. So if you've got some on hand, you could totally add some. It gives it more nutrients, of course, but it also helps keep it a bright green color. So that's it. You just want to store these in an airtight container. I'd pop it in the fridge. If you're going to use it for maybe like a few days or a week, it should be fine in the fridge. You can also freeze this. You can freeze it in ice cubes. You can freeze it, in different containers. So I froze some, pop the rest in the refrigerator, and there are tons of uses for pesto. We love doing a pesto pasta salad, so we'll mix cooked pasta with pesto and then like some tomatoes, mozzarella cheese. It's great mixed with mayonnaise on sandwiches. You can use it as a base for pizzas. You can mix it with pasta for dinner, put it into your Alfredo sauce. So many uses. Today, I took some Joseph's pita bread, spread the basil pesto on the pita, cut it into triangles, popped it in the air fryer at 400 degrees for, maybe like 5 to 8 minutes until the pitas got crispy. I served it with this red pepper feta dip, and oh my gosh, those pesto pita chips were delicious. So stinking good. Last but not least, we're going to make our own flavored butter. Now, you can absolutely buy flavored butters in this store. They have all different varieties and flavors, but I had some fresh strawberries on hand that I needed to use up. They were getting a little questionable, and I was looking for a way to use them that wasn't like, the typical putting them in the freezer for smoothies. I've already got plenty of strawberries in the freezer for that, or doing like homemade jam. I just made that a couple weeks ago, and so I was looking on Pinterest, and I saw this strawberry honey butter, and I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds delicious. And I had everything on hand, so here's what I'm going to use. As you can see, not a lot of ingredients, just really a couple. We've got some butter and honey. Now, for the butter, I use unsalted butter. That's what I always have on hand. It's just a personal preference. So because I'm using unsalted butter, we're going to add in a pinch of salt. If you're using salted butter, don't add any more salt to it. And then we have the strawberries. Now, after making this, I think blackberry honey butter would be delicious. You could try other fruits, I'm sure, but this was so yummy. So let me show you how to do this real quick. It was so easy. So I'm going to hold the strawberries. I'm just using a spoon. You could do a melon baller if you'd prefer to do that. We're removing the center, the greens, and then I decided to just kind of chop them with the spoon, cut them into pieces really, just to make it easier to mash. We're then going to mash that with a fork until it's kind of like almost a jam consistency, and we're going to set that to the side. To a little food processor, we're going to add in the butter. Now, you can use a regular size. I'm using this little food chopper. I got this, gosh, y'all, years and years ago. It's so old. It was like one of the Walmart Black Friday specials for like $10 or something. You could use a regular food processor if you'd prefer. So once we've added the butter, we're going to add that pinch of salt. Like I said, if you're using salted butter, don't add that extra salt. We're going to process that until the butter is nice and fluffy, and you do want to scrape down the sides. We're then going to add in the strawberries and the honey, and then give that one final pulse until everything is really well combined and the butter is nice and fluffy. Now, this recipe would very easily be doubled or even tripled. I even think this would be really great to do at Christmas time. Something different and unique, like as a food gift goes. I know a lot of times we give cookies or cinnamon rolls, but I think this would be different. You could give it up to people rolled up in some parchment paper, make it look really pretty. And you could also serve it with some cinnamon rolls. I think it'd be great with that. So once that was mixed really well, I decided to transfer it to a bowl and just give it a really good stir. That was just personal preference. I don't think the recipe said to do that, but you want to transfer that to a dish. It's fine out at room temperature, covered of course for a day or two, but if it's going to be any longer than that, I'd pop it in the fridge. Again, you could also freeze this, but right before you go to serve it, you want to let this sit out a little bit just until it softens up to make it easy to spread. This would be so good on like pancakes or waffles, homemade bread, toast, bagels. We had it on biscuits. Of course, homemade biscuits would be even better, but just the canned, it was so delicious. You know, I've had honey butter before, but it was something about the strawberries combined with the honey and the butter that was just delicious. And like I said, I really think this with blackberries would be so good. All right, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this gave you some ideas, maybe inspired you to, you know, try one or two things making from scratch. Again, there's nothing wrong with buying stuff from the store, but you know, it's good skills to learn to know how to make them ourselves at home. And especially if we, you know, have stuff that we're trying to use up, like extra basil or some fruit that's about to go bad, great ways to use that instead of wasting it. So, like I said, I hope this gave you some ideas to try. I hope you liked this video. If you did, hit the thumbs up button below and subscribe to my channel if you're not already. And I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.